Good morning. Very good morning to all of you. Welcome. So as you can see, I'm here in the middle of a jungle. This is the jungle that the municipality of Cervia wanted to put on the stage in order to remind us of the importance of green spaces. We're in Cervia. Once again, Cervia shows to be the capital city of green areas. And we're here to talk about some very important aspects. Some aspects that are part of our lives, they were part of our lives before, and they will be even more part of our lives in the next future. We're going to talk about environmental emergency, climate emergency, and the health emergency now obviously is the main emergency, but we know that we also have to cope with the environmental emergency. We would have loved to be here all together, face to face, but we have to be here at a distance. But we deeply wanted to have this conference today. The municipality of Cervia wanted to organize this conference anyway. We will talk about some topics that are part of our daily job for some of us, but for some other people, it will be something interesting, something new to hear about. We will talk about green areas. We will talk about the importance of trees and the importance of urban forests for our lives in the future. Because, urbanization, that is to say, the migration from the country to the cities has now turned into reality. So this is what we have to talk about urban forests. During the day, we will have very high-level speakers, and they will tell us about what has happened to our climate and also what we have to do in order to try and mitigate climate change, what we have to do in order to promote the environment in a very, with a high degree of awareness. And you know that Cervia has always played a very important role from this point of view.
Welcome back to our forest, and let's start with this afternoon session. We are going to start with Alfonso Femia, an archi star, so low profile. I'm joking. Alfonso Femia is a friend of Cervia. He is a world-renowned architect. He has firms in Milan, Genoa, and Paris. And he is also a member of the commission that will evaluate the projects for the Cervia Urban Park. I immediately give the floor to him. He is going to talk about Equilibrium, a project for the responsibility between nature and artifice. Good morning. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? That's the number one question for this type of event. I immediately share. I'm going to share immediately the presentation. Okay, can you see that? Perfect. So, I'll try to tell you a little bit something about this important point of view. The title you chose for the event tells me the importance of some words, the beauty of living urban. I think it's extremely important. So I would like to start with what we call a project is the meeting with the territory, a city, a history. And it is a dialogue, an exchange, an exchange between nature and artifice is fundamental in my opinion. So I talk about responsibility, the responsibility we should all take in this period. And the reason generations lived a relationship with reality in a different way compared to the past. In the past, it was a more physical approach. Whereas now there's a problem in the relationship with reality. And at the moment, we are physically isolated, connected virtually, which is a very strange thing. It's weird. And I don't know if we are able to manage this moment by using some specific words.
Quindi la prima azione per noi, diciamo, che riguarda, diciamo, il progetto da questo punto di vista è il tema
from this point of view, the act of seeing is something at the basis.
Un po' in relazione a ciò che abbiamo tutti i giorni sotto gli occhi, che spesso
Every day we do not watch in the right way, and there's a word that I don't use so much at the moment. Ecosystem. Ecosystem is something actually connected to today's relationship. There is a closer relationship. And there is a relationship between the territory and mankind, which is also fundamental. Because the territory, it's something that we often forget, whereas what happens is what is important and what we can look at and analyze. In particular, we know that we need to consider also the action of man on the territory, and so the different relationship with landscapes. The relationship between man and environment, but also among themselves. This element makes me reflect a lot on other important things. Well, the horizon and time. Because we generally focus on the idea of perception and of landscape. And another thing that we tend to forget and over the last 30 years, we have considered the relationship between man and nature. The idea of perception has at its basis the concept of water. We actually lost the foundation relationship. And the topic of water, the theme of water, will be one of the most important environmental topics. Water will be at the core of the environmental choices, especially because, it is symptomatic of the idea of limitation, and all the things together makes us understand the idea of limitations. And considering this limit is the only way we can use to deal with nature. So again, nature has always taught us something fundamental, which is fundamental also for architecture, for the cities. And it's responsibility and generosity. So local administrations should be aware of these two things. And this goes back to the initial idea of equilibrium, of balance, as well as consciousness or awareness, and science, so the relationship with the figures, with research, but also the awareness of people.
Chiudo questa prima parte, diciamo, con un tema che riguarda il fatto di quanto noi in questi anni ci siamo riempiti di una parola che abbiamo reso completamente vuota, come la sostenibilità. La sostenibilità si è completamente rotta come condizione, non ha più senso nemmeno parlarne oggi perché
And again, we said that sustainability has somehow been interrupted, broken. There are some priorities that have been confused. But we should really talk about sustainability. And at the same time, a sort of catalog was created. But we forgot the ideas and the thoughts that are at the basis of this kind of reasoning. And we realized too late that there was a problem that we had to face, the climate change. And at the end, it's a sort of game. We are calculating how much time is left. And well, we lost this responsible look, which should slow down I'm sorry, because there are some problems with the audio, and so the translation was not very fluid. So going back to the idea of responsibility and responsible look, we should really slow down the let's say, the run of man in the world. Going back to another project, another important project, well, you see, this website, it tells that about 223 billion of square meters have been built, and it may get to 230 in 2060. And this exponential growth and in some areas of the world is giving problems to other areas in the world where this maybe didn't happen. So we should refresh the concept of sustainability. And nature is the founding element, once again, of this concept of sustainability. When we deal with the idea of forests and deforestation, there's a great responsibility for architects, and not only architects, that well, they declare and they have some manifestos and are involved in different types of projects. So we shouldn't talk about responsibility towards the environment, but responsibility to core, because it is fundamental to be aware of this need for sustainability, and should not be a competition. It's just a principle which should be at the basis of architecture itself. And one of the principles, the basis of this project, is the principle of sustainability and the fact of going beyond limits, trying to use a different perspective and have a new vision. This is why I wanted to share with you one of the first urban projects near Paris that was born as a first something that was actually a big opportunity to us. Because, as you can see here, every action at even a small scale can have repercussions at a wider level. So in this case, 3 cities had a common project, and so there was an infrastructural areas all around, surrounding it, that actually changed its look and made us understand that this area, compared to other assets in Paris and other cities, made us understand that reality should go hand in hand with the needs that we have. So the first important thing is the relationship with the territory, with the local area. And you see here the importance of water, of a river, which is really an element that binds, that puts things together, that matches things together. And here you see the relationship between natural density and urban density. It's about 50%. So the question here is, what kind of identity should we give? What kind of identity should we attach? Is it a sort of patchwork of buildings with no identity, with nature, forest is just a residue, or has no qualities? And the other important thing is the dimension of time. The dimension of time, the ability to think and to interact with projects in 5, 10 years. So this can have a role and can make us understand that these should be spread, have a wider impact on the surrounding area. So, going back to the project itself, we worked on the perimeter, but also we worked on the connection, and we worked on the idea of reducing the number of cars and also the scale and the identity of places. This is a scheme of the area and of how it was. And here you see nature and the density of nature in the pictures and in the map. So you see what we did with was already existing and what was implemented later. And you see here that we needed to go farther and follow a path in the course of time, being able to meet different needs and requests that the city had. And the metaphor here is the pathway, let's say, of water, the journey of water with. And the other topic was working with symmetry. Normally, urban projects have this symmetry at an urban level, even though there are these differences in this diagonal, for example, in Barcelona, which is different compared to the concept of boulevard, which is a straight line to cross. And so we want to affirm asymmetry, sorry, which is able to create some anchoring with its context, with its area. And so the actions are integration, the fact of freeing up areas, irrigating, so building new water distribution systems, and also reconnecting, creating new lines between functional areas, and enhance some public spaces, but also polarize these public spaces and create a real place, which is the basis of the territory, combine and create a relationship between what is already existing. With all these things, so we got to the idea of densification. The interpreter apologizes, but some of the words that the speaker is saying cannot be heard. This project at the beginning was composed of 4 parts, but it included different public authorities in 4 years. and then it was at the basis of other projects.
Si sono basati proprio su queste riflessioni nel tempo per poter poi agire i singoli punti. Allora,
so responsibility, nature, the idea of urban foster, which is a foundation element for this kind of projects, but it must be at the basis of the territory itself and not of the city. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, for your ability to sum up concepts and keywords. I think that the concept of several territories, the fact of thinking of different interventions, as also the local councillor Priolo was saying, having projects that do not have limitations, do not have borders, but can involve several areas, several territories. This is not banal. This is not something to be taken for granted, and it's not easy at all. But it's one of the things that really impressed me more. And so this is the take-home message that I will also take to the final conclusions today. I would like to ask you to stay with us because maybe there will be questions at the end of the second session. Now, let's change scene and let's move to the Po Delta, because Maria Pia Pagliarusco is going to... hello, Maria Pia. Welcome. Hello, Roberto, and thank you. So Maria Pia will talk about a project connected to sustainability and to the to a very complex ecosystem, maybe one of the most complex, together with forests. Maria Pia, I give you the floor for your presentation. Thank you. Thanks to the mayor of Cervia, my former president, for inviting me, Mr. Meidri. We have worked together for 4 years. And so I would really like to thank him for inviting me. When I was asked to introduce a project, to present a project, it was a difficult choice because there are lots of projects that we are carrying out. So I didn't know what to talk about. At the end, I decided to present a project about the ecosystem services. And considering the previous presentations, I think I chose the right one. I am going to share with you my presentation now, my screen.
Datemi un attimo di tempo. Vedo, eccolo qua. Ok, sono andata
okay.
Allora, dicevo, ho ritenuto appunto di...
Maria Pia, ti abbiamo perso.
Sorry, but there are problems with the connection. The speaker is not connected anymore. Sorry, can you go back a little bit because the connection went down. So can you go back to the beginning of the presentation? Thank you. So I'm sorry, maybe I made some mistakes with this technology. So I was saying that the ecosystem services are extremely important in terms of survival and well-being for the mankind. And even though we started studying this idea in the 40s, it is still not very well known. I would like to give you a quickly overview about the ecosystem services that can be considered. First, when we say ecosystem services, we talk about the systems, the services, sorry, with multiple benefits that are offered for free to ecosystems. They come from ecological functions that become service only when they intercept, when they meet a demand. So the survival of mankind depends on the ecosystem services which are at the basis and surround man itself. This concept is even more important if we consider that, if we consider the natural resources, the natural capital, but also the fact that we have to reach the objectives set by the UNESCO Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. And going back to the idea of protected area, but I don't want to dwell too much on this. Well, I decided to talk about the different categories of ecosystem services. We have the procurement, so farming, production, hunting. Hunting is both connected to the procurement of food, but also to culture. So it's halfway. Then there are cultural services, regulation services such as water purification, or support services with the habitat and species conservation and nutrient recycling. Another important thing is the assessment of the economic value of ecosystem services. So this assessment, so the fact of using it for real economy, is based on the identification of ecosystem services, a biophysical quantification, the determination of their economic value, and payment for service systems, the identification of beneficiaries, and finally, the types of payment itself. And here is the Delta Lady project. We realized that with the tools that we had to manage the park, and these kind of tools of instruments have an importance at an urban level and are at the basis of our work in the park. Well, it was necessary to define and also, let's say, assess the value to pay for ecosystem values because they are not included. We realized that they were lacking and we realized that they were fundamental. They were fundamental to consider for this project. And this is where this project stemmed for. This project was carried out together with Arter, with the Emilia-Romagna region. It was financed within the Interreg Central Europe project, and it was launched in October 2018 and will continue until 2023. In my opinion, this project is extremely important because it involves 6 European countries where there are river deltas. For example, there is France, Romania, Ireland, Spain, Italy. And the purpose of the project, well, it started from the identification of these European countries characterized by a high richness in terms of biodiversity, but poor countries, so areas with a very important and a very high value natural capital, but their economic performances are among the lowest in Europe. So GDP, average income are low in those areas. So what is the aim of the project? What is its purpose? The project aims to work on policy instruments that can support the economic growth of these countries, of these regions, by enhancing the ecosystem services and determining their quantification for payment itself. So the main goal was to promote some innovative uses of ecosystem services, starting from the natural capital generating ecosystem services, supporting the regional development. So the project is concentrated on the management of the territory of the area, which can play a role at a local level. In the river delta, the Po Delta, the area is divided into 6 areas connected to 6 station plans. The idea is to exchange know-how and good practices to improve and define regional policies for ecosystem services. So each region involves local stakeholders that can provide or take advantage of these systems, and the new practices will be at the basis of the improvement of policy instruments for the Po Delta. And what did we do? First, the area is extremely wide, for 54,000 hectares. The characteristics and natural features are extremely different. So also in terms of landscape, there are great differences. And we identified 2 pilot areas, one for Volano, Mesola, Goro, and the second one for the Valle di Comacchio valleys. And for the first one, there was a specific area in the area of Goro. And local stakeholders were involved, together with those in charge of the urban planning of the different areas. So other speakers talked about small municipalities. How is it possible to be effective considering that their small size, and also receive the right advice and counseling and expertise to do it? I can say that the park includes 9 small municipalities. Well, no, they are not all small, but I think that the fact of joining is at the basis of its success in this sense. So the results and also the different contributions were different according to the areas. And very interesting thing is that all the authorities are working on the general urban plans and also taking into consideration the Italian law of 2017. And the fact of dealing with these urban plans some actions will be included for the preservation of biodiversity and of natural capital, which characterize us as a protected area. So what did we do? First, we identified 4 operational good practices that are characterized as payment for ecosystem services, PES. And this was a way to communicate to the beneficiaries the value of the natural capital and also involve them in the decision-making process. The activities of fishing or hunting or mushroom picking are fundamental and were divided, let's say, into the different areas of the park. For example, eel fishing in the Comacchio valleys, and finally, tourism and education for the Comacchio salt pans. So tourism was also the starting point to replicate this ecosystem service on the whole area, because the final purpose is to have a role in the in changing policy instruments and give the chance to other realities to replicate the example. We collected a series of data to estimate from a biophysical and economic point of view the ecosystem services in the stations of the Comacchio Valleys and Polano Mesolagoro, which had been previously identified. And we tried to quantify the economic value of natural capital overall by means of the, let's say, addition of 2 components. One is the use value, so the economic value of the ecosystem service itself, and the non-use value, so the value attributed by the people to the natural capital, even when their benefits and use are not considered, are not taken into account. So this value was calculated by means of surveys among the population, and people were asked if they were willing, let's say, to pay and how much they were willing to pay for such a system. The project will be concluded in 2023. The next steps will involve tourist operators to define the PES, so the payment for ecosystem services for ecotourism. And I think that well, another thing that we would like to do, and we are already doing part of it, we would like to identify some ecosystem services also for their payment that are in line both with the urban tools used by the various authorities and the park itself with its stations. And finally, to contribute to preserving this biodiversity, we will continue underline the importance of this area, not only for Italy, but also for a wider international tourism.
Thank you, Maria Pia. Please stay with us for any questions that there might be at the end of the next speech by Professor Salvitano. Fabio is already here. He's a professor of forestry at the University of Florence. He's an expert in forests, woods, and so I'm going to leave the floor to him now. Well, are you there? Yes. Okay. So no need for any further introduction. So I'm going to leave the floor to him. Very good afternoon. Can you hear me? I hope you can hear me well. Well, yes, I'm going to talk about urban forests. Urban forests and ecosystems. I don't have any specific projects to tell you about. I would like to tell you more in general about the management of urban forests. The first remark I'd like to make is that, well, you know, the cities are the main cause of many problems, also for human beings. Well, obviously, they act like magnets because many people prefer to move to the cities, but however, they present with many vulnerabilities, many problems which require an answer. They require to be fixed. They require a new attitude. They require some proposals and solutions. So, with regard to my work, and also well, related to what my colleague said, we should give more value to ecosystem services as carriers of new opportunities and well, a higher quality for the environment. Another aspect that is also very interesting. Well, you know, when we wake up in the morning, we should always think about the trees, I think, and we should think about planting new trees. But why? Well, trees have a very deep meaning, and this is why we're trying to plant as many, well, many of them. And obviously, we also have to maintain and well, be aware of the value of already existing forests and trees and ecosystems that have been existing for thousands and thousands of years. So there are many initiatives at the moment, all of them very useful, very meaningful. What are urban forests? Because I have the feeling quite often that, well, urban forests, but also the word, the expression urban forestation at the moment, well, this is quite fashionable at the moment. Well, of course, these are very up-to-date. All these subjects are very up-to-date. So what are they? Well, they are not forests as we may think of them in the most classical way. So, for example, mountains or hills covered in trees, where then very complex processes intermingle and grow. Well, you know, over the time we have developed the concept of urban forests. They are a network, a system, where we could include woods, individual trees, inside urban and peri-urban territories or areas. So there could be it could be parks, gardens, trees in marginal areas. Well, urban forests might also include trees by the roadside. So what we usually refer to as green infrastructure. green infrastructure in contact with the urban environment. They are a bridge between rural areas and urban areas. They represent a connection. There are different types of urban forests here. You can see a few of them. These are the ones mentioned by FAO guidelines about urban and peri-urban forests, but obviously we could have many different and many other classifications. Well, I know that classifications may be quite boring, but they are extremely useful when it comes to planning our towns and cities. But anyhow, there are some specific indications about urban forests. So they are trees along the roads and also in public spaces. Or then we refer to urban forests and when we talk about forests and architecture of the landscape, so public parks and gardens, or then some ancient urban woods, or also some symbolic and monumental trees. So different elements, different things refer to urban forests. But we should also have a look at the services and the benefits of urban forests. Now we're going to watch a short video. I hope you can hear the audio, and then you will tell me if you can hear it. We can't hear it, we can only see it. Sorry. Well, I let the video continue because actually it was just music, so it doesn't really matter if you didn't hear the sound or the audio because it was just music. So there was no spoken text. Well, these services are strictly connected to the objectives of sustainable development, and obviously always depends on our concept of sustainability. But anyhow, well, some international directives have been published, and then some national policies have been drawn up and implemented. And well, so urban forests are at the center of political plans and projects. So urban forests are related to all the objectives of sustainable development. Here, there's no reference to objective number 14. If we think about river, delta, estuaries, or, well, cities in Latin America, also mangroves are to be considered as urban forest. I'm not going to repeat what the previous colleague said. I'm not going to define ecosystem services. Just a few examples. Ecosystem services are linked to urban forests. And well, I'd like to share this example of urban food forests, that is to say, sort of edible urban forests. And this is a specific type of urban forests that are extremely useful. I mean, edible urban forests for sure will not solve food-related problems in the cities or in the world. But anyhow, they are something quite interesting in order to increase participation of the citizens, social inclusion, a construction of the sense of community, and at the same time they have a very strong educational task role. Well, I'm also referring to education to food, education to eating, having on your doorstep some fresh food that grows up, that grows in a very natural way without being modified or changed. There are actually many different experiences. And for sure, one of the most interesting is the Picasso food forest of Parma. And well, it's actually become a community project in Parma, and it is about food production and food provision thanks to a food forest. So the food forest has become a new way to create some social relations, to produce food and provide social relations. We're not going to watch the next video. I'd like to show you some examples of, well, this is a project for Emilia-Romagna region. It is called Regenerating the City by Means of Nature, so using nature. And another specific example is this research related to the Florence urban forest and its contribution to the reduction of fine dust and pollutants. Sorry. And well, this is a research, a type of research that can really help us understand where to plant the trees. How shall we plant them? How can we plant them so that they are more helpful in order to improve the quality of the air? And also, how can we plant the trees in order to have an impact on microclimate? Sorry, Flavio, you don't have time left. Okay, the next 3 slides with regard to supporting services. Supporting services are extremely interesting. Also, you know, when we talk about biodiversity, it's not just about having nature available, but actually many more things related to life, having trees, being able to support well-being. And there are some examples. This is this is a project, a life project that has also become an educational project in the north of Italy, and then cultural services. You know, at the moment, we are working in order to promote the importance of trees inside cultural UNESCO sites.
Configurazione e gestione dei siti patrimoniali dell'UNESCO per quello che riguarda la presenza di aspetti
and in fact, we are trying to analyze them. 20% of cultural sites, UNESCO sites, in the world do have something related to urban forests. And then, obviously, we have the issue of functionality, like comfort, thermal comfort, ecotourism, the creation of a specific economy out of urban forests, but also the possibility to increase biodiversity. And well, again, we're talking about heat islands, thermal comfort, and the possibility to increase the quality of life in cities, but health itself. So health and well-being as perceived by the people, thanks to the cooling down of temperatures, but also well, taking care of their psychophysical well-being. This is the city of Merano, and well, they have carried out this urban forest project, and it's been very beneficial. So, in my opinion, urban forest should be a synonym of happiness, well-being, health. These are solutions based on nature, and I hope that you will all help us plant trees, and above all, seed the conditions, or well, plant or seed create the conditions for a better future. Well, thank you. We've been talking about planting trees since this morning, and so now I would like to open the question time, to start the question time. There are a couple of questions, maybe? Well, are there any questions? Yes, the first question to Alfonso Femia, and I would like to ask you, since you work in the international context,
qual è la seconda della sua
we would
visione,
like
la
to
realtà
ask you,
territoriale, intendiamo nazionale o anche interregionale, che in questo periodo ha mostrato una maggiore sensibilità nella
in
gestione
Italy, but also abroad,
degli spazi
so
naturali
in which
per
area
rapporto con la
are they
crescita
showing more
urbanistica.
sensitivity to the environment and the relation with the urban setting? Are you asking me to name a specific place, or are you asking me about the future trends? Well, with regard to the future trends or the current trends, I must say that in Italy and in France, in the last 15 years, there's been a replacement of criteria, so some new criteria that impose a higher surface covered by vegetation.
Che mediamente è una percentuale sul 30-35%, 40% alcune volte,
So,
alcuni interventi che o sono sull'ambito urbano, quindi demolizione e ricostruzione,
and also in terms of
sulle aree
new
nuove
buildings.
Noi stiamo, per esempio,
We both in Italy and in
una
France,
richiesta
we're
che questa percentuale si sposti al
using some new techniques
per fare in modo che ci sia
in order to have a better balance, to find this difficult balance. But, well, we need to do that. The current trend is that there's certainly more awareness, more sensitivity. And well, but quite often there are many projects, very ambitious projects, which are not actually implemented. The projects are very ambitious. They want to be super sustainable, but it's very hard to put them into practice. Very often these projects just disappear. They are just abandoned due to their costs. But undoubtedly, there's a very strong attention on these subjects. But I would like to have to change the mindset of people, not just to change the guidelines. I would like people to have a new mindset. So cultural mindset. I don't know if I was clear enough. Thank you, Alfonso. And now a question to the director of the park.
Sempre anche in questo caso, avendo una visione ultraterritoriale, diciamo, volevamo capire,
from quite a general perspective, I'd like to ask you, Maria Pia,
amministrazioni locali delle due province che hai attraversato.
You're working on two provinces. You worked with two provinces for the implementation of this project. So I'd like to ask you if this will, in your opinion, do you think that we will have an integrated town plan in the future? I mean, joining different municipalities together. Well,
uno scambio complessivo, ma anche ci siamo sentiti singolarmente.
As you know, I've been collaborating with individual municipalities, but we also had some meetings with all of them all together. We know that every municipality has a different organization. And of course, we have received different responses from the different municipalities. Some of them are more keen on some aspects, for example, Cervia, Ravenna and Argenta. Some others instead haven't understood yet the potentials of ecosystems, of promoting ecosystems. As I told you earlier, although, well, I know that my speech was just a summary, it was very schematic and it was a summary, but however, many ecosystem services are already paid. For example, hunting. Hunting is paid for when people get the authorization to go hunting, and we reinvest that money into the environment. Well, the only thing is that well, these activities are not traced or monitored. We would like to act as a common trait among the different institutions. Because, as I said, the park has many different environmental characteristics. Anyhow, we would like to identify some ecosystem services that can be easily replicated in almost all areas. This is why we started from tourism. Because tourism is, well, relates to all the institutions that are part of the park. And therefore, as part of the general town plan, we would like to make sure that all municipalities are involved in the same town plan, more or less, or at least with some common features. Last question to Professor Salvitano. Where are we building these new urban forests? Well, because this is also one of the key issues. There are so many projects by regional administrations or national administration. But, well, first of all, it would be a good idea to manage the already existing forests and woods properly. But also, where shall we find all the land that we need in order to build the urban forests? Shall we get the land from agriculture? And well, what do you think? Such a general question, it's not easy to answer. But first of all,
quello che solitamente dice. Di solito
we should, as we always say, plant the right tree at the right place. First of all, we should select the right places and then plant the right trees. So the right place means a place that is available, but also the right place is where the planted trees will have their best performance. So if we plant trees as one of the actions that we are putting into place in order to fight against climate change. Even if we plant hundreds of millions of trees, we will not solve climate change, of course. I mean, this is not sufficient. It's not enough. Of course, we need to do many more things like reduce consumption, make the best use of energy resources, etc. We will have to do many things together. Well, actually, it may have like a boomerang effect if we think that we can solve all climate change problems or all the problems we have nowadays by just planting trees. Well, again, as I said, we need to plant the right trees at the right place. As Maria Pia said, well, we will have to choose a land in order to host a forest, but maybe not everybody will agree with that. We need to be able to keep a certain balance in our society. So let's see what kind of ecosystem services we will be able to generate. And also let's try to listen to all stakeholders. Let's meet them. Let's draw up contracts. For example, in Lombardy region, they have created an urban forest after signing a contract with the owners of the land in order to maximize ecosystem services. So we can't just say we will plant 100 billion trees. This will not fix the entire world. We have to plant some sort of conditions. I mean, we need to have a certain structural project from the aesthetic, economic, social, environmental point of view, of course, ecological point of view. Only by doing that, we will manage to obtain some results. And this is something that we have started already with Emilia-Romagna regional government, since we know about the plan to plant 4.5 million trees corresponding to 4.5 million inhabitants, the inhabitants of the region. Because otherwise, once you have planted all the trees, if nobody manages or maintains them, it will be a failure. Actually, there's a question from a colleague from Rimini, and he's actually asking a question to Professor Salvitano. Is Professor Salvitano still with us? Please, could you reply to this question, Professor Salvitano? Here I am. Well, thank you. I've just read the question. It is a question about the contribution that trees can give in the cities for carbon sequestration. Well, younger trees have a very high level of carbon sequestration, but then they reduce the absorption of CO2. Well, in a city where, sorry Fabio, but there are some sound problems, really some big audio problems. Can you put your microphone closer to your mouth? Could you hear what I said? So I said, well, this is due to the fact that younger trees are more efficient and have a better performance when it comes to absorbing carbon dioxide and fixating carbon dioxide, while adult trees tend to lose this power, this effect. And for sure, in an urban environment, we know that usually trees are quite younger, they are replaced quite often. So for sure, trees can play a major role. They can contribute a lot to carbon sequestration. So well, you know, I don't think carbon sequestration is the main task of trees in the cities. We can't think that the trees on roadside in the cities can solve the problem of emissions of carbon dioxide into the air. As our colleague said, all the machines and the equipment that is used in order to do the maintenance of trees in the cities, these machines and equipment consume fuel, and therefore they further contribute to pollution. Well, I think that in fact we should change our management system, maintenance and management system. We should find some maintenance systems that are more environmentally friendly, so which require less assistance or fewer interventions. The best tree is the one that doesn't need to be pruned. Sometimes we have to prune trees because the tree has been planted in the wrong position, in the wrong place. So again, it was the wrong project, and therefore we find ourselves with trees in the wrong position. So on one hand, we have to improve our maintenance systems and procedures, and also, as Massimiliano said, we need to opt for semi-natural forest contexts. That is to say, we need to have woods and forests that look less artificial, because otherwise they will not be efficient in terms of carbon sequestration, among the other things. Instead, if we have natural forests or almost natural forests, for sure, they will have a much better carbon sequestration activity. With regard to ancient forests, as mentioned by the previous speaker, well, you know, carbon keeps on accumulating along the entire life of the tree. You know, trees keep on fixating carbon inside their structure, and they keep on growing. Well, we know that there is some reintroduction of CO2 into the atmosphere from them, but if we allow microsystems to create a soil. Let's remember that it's actually soil that store carbon much more than trees. So something revolutionary would be to design, to build, and to manage some urban forests with the possibility to store carbon in the soil, having trees that can have a long life in order to store carbon in their tissues and structures, remembering that the idea of an ancient forest as a structure with tall trees, majestic tall trees, this anthropological idea of the forest, well, this belongs to narration, really. Ancient forests are the ones that continuously move, they change continuously. The trees fall down, and then there's new generations of trees coming up. This is the dynamic, and it's nothing perfect for sure. I mean, there's a continuous change. And this is where the maximum carbon sequestration takes place. So there's a continuous change. There are different life cycles and natural life cycles. So if we manage to have all of this, we will have a better sequestration. In Italy, we have 12 billion trees. In our cities, we have 6 or 7 million trees. So it's very little. It's very little trees. And this is why we can't have a huge carbon sequestration at the moment, but we can do better. Okay, all right, thank you. Thanks to the three of you.